Apple actually might have done it. I am not somebody who shoots a lot of stuff on my iPhone or use my phone as a filmmaking tool in general, but Apple just announced a brand new 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max with a bunch of different things in terms of the camera and the video features, which actually might make it a really viable filmmaking tool, or even better, your first camera. Although there are a couple of caveats that obviously come with phones, but well, we'll get into it. Now, this is my iPhone 13 or 14. I actually don't know which phone this is. Now, the iPhone 16 Pro Max, which is the one I'm going to talk about because that's the one I think I'm pretty much sold on, does feature a 6.9-inch screen at 2000 nits. This is actually a really cool deal because a lot of camera monitors at the professional level are around that 2000 nits, which means that if you are filming outside or in brighter areas, you're going to be able to still have the brightness that you could shoot in broad daylight, which even some professional cameras don't have the ability to do. I'm looking at a lot of Sony cameras here. They also have updated their build quality as well. They've added some nano mumbo jump. I don't know what it is, but the easiest way that it explained on the commercial is, well, it's oopsie proof, which that's more than fine for me because I kind of don't use a case at all, or very often. Now, another reason why the iPhone 16 Pro Max is going to be a great filmmaking tool is its implementation of its own log profile in Apple Log. Now, this happened in the iPhone 15 in a phone that I skipped and I still haven't used just yet. But from the videos that I've watched and seeing other filmmakers and other creators use Apple Log, it's actually pretty decent for what it is. I mean, you're still going to have things that look like an iPhone, but at the same time, to be able to actually have that dynamic range, which we will break down in the commercial that we saw at the beginning of the announcement in another video, the Apple Log is going to give you the flexibility in your dynamic range and as well as to be able to color grade your footage the way that you want it to, which is similar to other cameras that have log profiles that we enjoy already. Now, for all of you spec nerds out there that want to know the maximum resolution and frame rate that you can use, you could use up to 4K 120 frames a second on the iPhone Pro and Pro Max. That's pretty much the same as my Sony FX3, albeit there's sensor differences, but you're also going to be able to do that in log and in ProRes as well. If you're someone that uses DaVinci Resolve, your color space transform actually is familiar with Apple Log. That's going to make it a lot easier for color grading, or if you're someone that sends things to an editor, whether you shoot on an iPhone or a professional camera, ProRes is a pretty universally accepted format, and also it's a little bit easier on your computer while still holding a lot of information. In terms of the lenses you're going to be able to get with this camera, it's going to have a 13mm ultra wide lens. If you watched the commercial that was at the beginning, you actually saw a lot of the wider shots. So 13mm is going to be great, especially if you need those establishing shots or perspective shots when you have your subject close to the lens and you want a different look. You're also going to get a second lens or second camera, don't know what they call it. It's going to have a 24mm lens, but also can go to 2x, so you can get 48mm at a high resolution equivalent. They've also added a 120mm camera as well, so if you are looking for those telephoto shots that are going to give you a lot of reach while still keeping the same quality, you're going to be able to use these 4 lenses in just one really tiny phone. Now, what makes it a little bit different than some other cameras is sometimes you have a fixed lens camera, or sometimes you have to change up your different lenses depending on what you're going to be using. With the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max, you're going to have that all built into one, which is kind of handy, but we'll talk about some of the reasons why you might not want to get an iPhone as your main filmmaking tool, but this is a very useful piece of technology nonetheless. New to the iPhone and something that's going to be really useful for filmmakers is going to be the camera control button. Now, I haven't fleshed this out because I don't have an iPhone yet, but you can actually use this camera control button in order to control some of the features of, well, your cameras. You can use things like being able to change your exposure, your depth of field, or what's really just called your aperture or your iris, and as well as to be able to change your zoom and switch between the different cameras that are on the phone itself. Now, there are going to be a couple other features once this gets into hands of some other filmmakers, but the idea that there's a dedicated button to control your camera, especially for video, makes things a lot easier. Sometimes when I'm using my phone, I have to swipe down on the screen and sometimes I don't get it right, and then I have to click on the camera, then I have to click on the video features, and sometimes I might miss a moment by doing all of those steps. With the camera control button, you're going to be able to do that at the tap of a button, making things a lot easier, but also Apple's finally listening to the consumers and giving you slightly bit more in terms of the manual control that you want in terms of your aperture and your exposure while taking video. Now, this is inside of the photography features, but there is going to be a photographic style option that's going to be on the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max. This gives you the ability to actually change the color and change the mood of what you want out of the images that you've already captured on your phone. Now, if this is available for video, this is actually Apple's way of having LUT implementation, sort of like the Lumix S9, which I'm shooting on right now, or the Sony FX3, which has a different version of it as well. If you're going to be able to add this to video, which is still unconfirmed just yet, you're going to be able to change that Apple Log into different styles styles that you actually want for your videos. This might also open up to, in the future, being able to add your own LUTs into the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro Max in order for you to generate a type of look out of the images that you get, and also have a unique style to your videos in terms of your color and how you grade your videos. If they're able to do that, that's actually going to be perfect, really. I think that's a really useful tool. Now, something that's not specific to the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max is going to be using the Blackmagic app. Now, I'm going to reference my buddy Mike Tobin over here because he has gone really in depth into this app, but it also gives you even more expanded control over the cameras that are already in your phone. Now, the new photo app in the announcement looked like you could control things like your aperture and your exposure index and things like that, but if you're going to be on the Blackmagic app, you're going to get the ability to control your shutter speed or your ISO, the format that you're actually going to take these videos down in a nice and concise way that's really similar to using the I/O from the Blackmagic cameras, which is honestly the easiest menu system in the world. You're going to get a lot more manual control functions, and the fact that you're going to still get that Blackmagic app on the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max, which means you're going to have even more control and better opportunities for filmmaking on something as small as your cell phone. Now, for pre-orders right now, they only kind of set the prices of the entry level in terms of your memory, but I'm probably guessing you could get up to a couple terabytes in terms of the storage on your phone, especially when having a bunch of gigantic size files in terms of your ProRes and even using Apple Log. Especially when you're using 4K up to 120 frames a second, it might take up a lot of space. So my recommendation, and not necessarily a feature, is to just make sure you get the memory according. I'm probably gonna get the biggest one I could find. Now, being an old grandpa in relation to iPhones, I'm still using the Lightning connector, but you're also going to be able to get USB-C. This is super nice because a lot of things nowadays have USB-C connectivity, and also some of the accessories that are coming up in the future are going to be USB-C compatible. So having that on your phone as well theoretically makes it a really good tool, especially if you want to hook it up to other things like your rig, which, I mean, the only person I know that does that is Mike, and he's probably gonna have way more videos on how to rig up an iPhone, but having a USB-C connection instead of Lightning might actually help out a lot. Now, I did mention before that the iPhone 16 regular has actually been released as well, but there are some differences that make the Pro and the Pro Max significantly better. For one is gonna be those high frame rates. If you love 120 frames a second, you will get it on the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max. Where on the regular iPhone 16, you're only gonna get 4K 60. Another thing that they added to the Pro and the Pro Max is a professional way of color management that you'll find on DaVinci Resolve, which is called ACES. Now I don't want to sound like a complete idiot because I'm not super familiar with the ACES workflow. I've used other things. However, if you are a professional colorist or you're working with professionals, that's a workflow that a lot of people are familiar with. So in terms of actually getting the looks that you want out of your phone and really pushing the color, if you want to pass it off to a professional or learn ACES yourself, you're going to be able to do that and not be limited to the device that you're using, which is going to be the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max. Another filmmaking tool that I use quite a bit is the ability to use frame guides. I like doing my compositions by using frame guides, either the rule of thirds, or if I have to make different pieces of content for different platforms in terms of a 16:9, a 9:16, or 1:1, you could actually have frame guides on the video features on your camera as well. This makes life a lot easier, especially when you're trying to get perfect composition for your films. A tool that you hear a lot about in professional camera settings, but not necessarily one in your phone. And the fact that it's native on the iPhone as well makes it super helpful. I don't necessarily know if that's a completely new feature, as I've skipped a couple of phones, but it is super useful, especially when you want to improve your composition. A lot of things I don't often hear about when we talk about smartphones being used as professional filmmaking tools is going to be audio. Now, the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max has added in a bunch of spatial audio as well to help you isolate and get the best audio track without having to set up a bunch of fancy and expensive audio equipment. Now, that isn't necessarily to say that you don't need a sound person on your next film using the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max. You're still going to need those things, and it's still going to have that place. However, if you are using a minimal kit, being able to use some of the AI features that are in the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max is going to help you improve your audio quality much better than you would have had on some other iPhones. To be able to actually take out some of the background noise and be able to save different takes in terms of your audio makes your life a little bit easier. So if you are somebody that's a filmmaker, it might be a viable option. But if you're somebody that does a lot of content on your own and you forget a microphone, or you lose a receiver to your DJI Mic 2 because you forgot it and it fell into a lake, you're going to be able to actually get those things done and still have great sound without a lot of extra equipment. Now, this isn't necessarily a feature that I've been able to flesh out just yet or give it a name, but one of the questions that comes with a lot of small sensor cameras like using an iPhone is going to be its low light performance. Now, once I get my hands on this, I'm going to test this a little bit more, but the announcement also had a video by The Weeknd shout out to Canadians, that actually showed you what it looks like in a low light situation. By low light, I don't mean no light. Shouldn't be shooting a film or a music video or commercial in pitch black and getting upset when you don't get the images that you want. However, while watching this music video, it looked really good on the iPhone 16 Pro Max. And in situations where you do have your lighting set up and you do have other parts of your production set up, the camera functions just like any other camera, as well as a 4K 120 frames a second did not look bad whatsoever on the iPhone 16 Pro Max while they were getting some of those shots during that music video. Now, that's not necessarily to say you're going to get the exact same quality as a professional filmmaking set, as there was a bunch of other equipment there. However, in terms of something that's more than decent as possibly your first camera that fits in your pocket, from what I'm looking at on the weekend video, I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to get pretty decent results while using the iPhone 16 Pro Max. And last things last is going to be the price. Now, right now, if you're looking at the base iPhone 16 Pro Max, because that's the one I'm getting, you're looking at about $11.99, which is kind of the same as some entry-level cameras to begin with a lot of very similar features, albeit the sensor size is going to be a little bit different, and there's definitely going to be nuances between getting an iPhone as a camera and getting something like a proper camera. Fact is, there's a lot of countries where you can just upgrade your phone and you don't necessarily have to buy the phone outright, so you're only paying monthly for it for about 2 years, which is around the same time a lot of people have their cameras for to begin with. But the fact that it's competitively priced, you're going to be able to shoot in 4K 120 frames a second, you have a ton of control options, it's updated with Apple Log, and the image quality for being a smartphone is really good. I think it's a more than reasonable price. Now, I use cameras like the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 for behind the scenes, and I'm shooting this video on the Panasonic S9 right now, which is within like $400 or $300 of getting an iPhone 16 Pro Max. Now, that still begs the question of whether or not an iPhone is going to eclipse the camera, but at the same time, in terms of the technology that's packed into it for filmmakers and getting your first device, I think $1,200 is a pretty good starting point. But again, everybody's budget is everybody's budget. I'm just saying, relative to other things that you could be getting yourself into, it's more than fine. I'm getting the iPhone 16 Pro Max because not only is it a great way to upgrade my iPhone, I kind of miss the kind of bigger iPhone. I had an iPhone 12 Pro Max for a while, but I also have a lot of video features in my pocket just in case I forget my camera or my girlfriend steals it again. And I get the ability to have really high resolution. I get to have a log profile within my smartphone's camera, which is something I haven't used before. And also, when I don't feel like packing a camera in a lens, or if I forget, I can just pull up my phone and I can trust it to actually get some pretty decent results. Now, do I think it's going to overtake traditional cameras of today? Hell no. There are so many different things that traditional cameras can do that phones just can't. For example, there's a compartmentalization of creative. If I'm using my phone as my main camera for filmmaking and photography, and I'm doing all of these things as a content creator, and somebody needs to give me a phone call or a FaceTime, or I need my phone for what honestly other phones are just made for, I have to stop those things and stop recording or stop creating content, which might take me out of my workflow while I'm creating content. Putting too many tasks in one basket might not be the greatest idea in the world. However, if I'm getting something super quick, it makes things a little bit easier. You're also going to get different looks out of different sensors from different cameras. A iPhone sensor is going to look a little bit different than Super 35 or a 1-inch sensor or a full frame or a medium format. There's going to be certain things in depth of field and image qualities that you might not be able to notice right away, but when you put them side by side, you're definitely going to notice in a big way as you level up bigger and bigger in production. Now, that's not to say an iPhone doesn't produce good image quality. I'm not saying that at all, but I am saying it's going to be a little bit different. And if your tastes change, there's nothing really you can go from in terms of your iPhone upgrading up, except for just a regular traditional camera. Now, if you're someone that rigs up your iPhone for a variety of different reasons, then this is kind of a moot point and you don't have to listen to this part. But if you're someone that likes to use your phone in bare bones and you also use other tasks on your phone as well, this might not be something where you want to use your iPhone as the only camera that you have. However, it's a good enough camera that if you are on your own and you do want to use it on your own, well, it's in your pocket and available in the next, 4 days. That being said, this is a quick overview of the Apple announcement for the iPhone 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max. I'm personally picking up the Max myself. I do want to make a little bit more content on them because I haven't really used iPhones as a filmmaking tool, but if what's on paper is going to be what the performance is going to be while I have the iPhone 16 Pro Max, I probably will use it a little bit more. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, leave a comment down below if you are going to pick up the new iPhone this year, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.